He didn't just walk away. He waited until the coffin of her mother was being lowered into the ground, weeks after her father's quiet burial, then stepped out from the line of mourners and pressed a manila folder into his wife's shaking hands while their 7-year-old son watched. That afternoon, at the edge of a fresh grave, Elena Vargas, who most people there only knew as Elena Cole, the quiet, ordinary wife, stood with mud under her shoes and tears in her eyes, one arm around her full-term belly, the other wrapped around Leo's shoulders, as her husband said, "Sign them when you can. I'm done." Then he turned his back on them. He walked across the cemetery with a suitcase rolling behind him, right past the parked cars, toward a waiting figure watching from behind tinted glass. He thought she had no power. He thought she had no name of her own. He thought leaving her at a burial would erase her from his life for good. What he never knew was this. The woman he had just abandoned was not just a wife. She was an only child. Her mother wasn't just Marisol. Her father wasn't just Victor. And that sealed envelope waiting in a lawyer's desk, addressed to Elena alone, held decisions that reached far beyond one broken marriage. While Adrian drove away to start the life he thought he deserved, Elena was already being asked to sit down, breathe, and listen to words recorded long before the betrayal he had planned so carefully. Words that would quietly flip the board he thought he was winning on. From that moment, this stopped being a story about a helpless, discarded wife. It became something else. A slow, precise war of documents, signatures, courtrooms, and consequences Adrian never imagined when he chose to walk away at a grave. Dear viewers, thank you for being here. If you watch without subscribing, it's like letting Elena's voice be buried with her mother. When you hit that button, you stand with every woman left in her worst moment and every child who watched a door close. Please subscribe now, and in the comments, tell me where you are watching from. The room exploded with quiet chaos the moment Elena Vargas opened the cedar box. Papers slid and fanned across the carpet like a small storm had burst open in her modest living room. Her hands shook, not from fear, but from the weight of what she was finally allowing herself to see. 40-year-old Elena, soft-spoken and gentle, knelt on the rug surrounded by documents she had spent years pretending did not define her, not to neighbors, not to friends, not even to her husband. The box itself was heavy, carved with the initials VH for Vargas Holdings, a name that appeared in business newspapers, industry reports, and the fine print of major corporate loans, but never in Elena's daily conversations. For most of her marriage, that box had sat at the back of her bedroom closet, exactly where her father told her to keep it until the right time. The right time had come sooner than anyone expected. A quiet gasp escaped her lips. Inside were gold-stamped company seals, share certificates, ownership agreements, and embossed folders marked with the Vargas emblem. They glimmered under the evening light, reflecting a world Elena had run from. A world too large, too powerful, too dangerous, for a woman who thought she only wanted simple love and a simple life. She had never counted it all, but she knew enough. Those seals, those papers, those signatures together represented a family empire quietly valued at around $9 billion. Wealth she had never used. Wealth she had never discussed with Adrian. Next to the papers lay a sealed legal envelope, thick and heavy. The label hit her like a fist to the chest. For Elena, to be opened by Mr. Hayes upon our passing. Her eyes stung and her breath hitched. Mr. Hayes, her parents' lawyer, loyal to the Vargas family for decades, had called her 2 days earlier. Elena, he'd said gently, bring the cedar box and that sealed envelope to my office after your mother's burial. Your parents left instructions. Now that envelope felt radioactive in her hands. Elena pressed it to her heart and closed her eyes. She was not just Elena, the quiet woman who worked part-time at a local charity and shopped during sales. She was Elena Vargas, only child of Victor and Marisol Vargas, founders of a multi-billion-dollar industrial empire. Her parents built factories, energy plants, and manufacturing hubs across the country through layers of private holding companies, so the family name never became celebrity gossip. Workers had homes because of Vargas wages. Towns had power because of Vargas contracts. But her parents hid their influence behind modest living and humility, and Elena had followed their example. Age 8, Her father, Victor, lifts her onto his shoulders during a factory tour. Workers grin and call her La Pequeña Jefa, the little boss. She waves back, giggling. Victor leans up and murmurs, "Remember, mi querida, greatness isn't measured by what others see. It's measured by how you treat people when no one is watching." Age 17. Her mother, Marisol, brushes her hair in their small but comfortable home. "Hide your wealth until you find a man whose love doesn't depend on it," Marisol says softly. "But why?" Young Elena frowns. "Because the wrong man," her mother replies, "will see your heart as a ladder, not a gift." The memories dissolved, replaced by the harsh truth of the present. 2 months ago, her parents' private jet suffered an engine failure mid-air. Investigators called it a mechanical malfunction. To Elena, it felt like the sky itself had torn open and swallowed her world. She had spent those weeks handling everything: legal documents, condolences, and 2 separate ceremonies. Her father's remains had been laid to rest quietly in a private family mausoleum overseas. Today's burial, the one she was still planning even as she knelt on this floor, would be her mother's final goodbye on local soil. 9 months pregnant, barely sleeping, still pretending to everyone, including her husband, that she was ordinary. A small hand tapped her shoulder. "Mommy, look!" 7-year-old Leo, bright-eyed and full of life, held up a drawing. In the picture, Elena's parents smiled beside a tall building labeled Vargas Main Plant. Elena froze. Leo didn't understand what he'd drawn. He'd only copied a photo he'd once seen tucked into her old album. But if Adrian saw it and started asking questions, she gently folded the drawing and slid it under the edge of the cedar box. "Let's keep this just between us, okay?" she whispered. Leo nodded happily, unaware that a simple drawing could pull threads that revealed everything. She ran a hand through his hair, love and guilt tangled together. Her husband, Adrian Cole, age 42, was ambitious, charming in public, and constantly restless. When they met, he admired her calmness, her kindness, and what he thought was her simple upbringing. He knew her parents owned some factories back home once, but Elena let him believe they'd sold everything and retired modestly. Over the years, his admiration had soured into frustration. He wanted status. He wanted more. He wanted a life that looked richer than their modest house and old car. He had no idea that Elena could quietly buy and sell every symbol of success he chased, 10 times over. She had chosen humility. She had chosen peace. She had chosen love. And now, with her parents gone and the cedar box finally open, none of it was hypothetical anymore. The empire was hers. Footsteps sounded behind her. Aunt Maria, her mother's older sister, entered the room with sorrow carved into every line of her face. "Elena, mi hija, are you all right?" Maria asked softly. Elena nodded. "Just finishing some things before tomorrow." Behind Maria, Sophia, Elena's 33-year-old cousin, stepped in carrying flower samples. Her eyes landed on the open box, then on Elena's pale face. "Elena, you should rest," Sophia murmured. "I will," Elena lied. But her world was already shifting. Her phone buzzed. She hoped, prayed it was Adrian checking on her, asking if she needed anything, remembering that tomorrow she would bury her mother. Instead, the message hit her like ice water. "Adrian, don't wait up. Late meeting, again." Her heart sank, her faint smile died. For the first time beneath her grief, she felt something else. A quiet warning, a crack she could no longer ignore. Somewhere deep in Westphal, Elena sensed it. The cracks in her marriage were widening, and something dark was coming. The front door slammed so hard the picture frames rattled. Elena flinched, her hand instinctively going to her belly. The sound tore through the quiet house like an accusation. Loud, sharp, impatient. On the floor, Leo looked up from his coloring book, crayons suspended midair. Adrian Cole had arrived home. 42, tall, charismatic, and once the man who made her believe in forever, Adrian now stood in the doorway like a stranger. His suit jacket hung over one shoulder, his tie loosened, his shirt slightly wrinkled, like he'd been somewhere that wasn't his office, long enough to forget a mirror. He didn't greet his son, he didn't look at Elena, he didn't ask about the funeral details or her doctor's appointment or her swollen ankles. He walked straight past them. The slam's intensity faded into a heavy, hurting silence. You're home late, Elena said gently, forcing her voice to be calm instead of pleading. I told you I had work, he snapped, tugging at his cufflinks. Leo watched from the corner, wide-eyed. He adored his father, but lately he treated Adrian like a wild animal, always trying to guess what version was coming through the door. Elena pushed herself up from the couch, the weight of her pregnancy aching in her back. She approached him slowly. You didn't answer my calls, she said. I thought something happened on the road. Adrian rolled his eyes. I was busy, Elena. Not everything is a crisis. Her phone lay on the table beside his. As she reached for it, his screen lit up. A preview flashed for half a second. Just long enough. See, can't stop thinking about last night. Elena's lungs forgot how to work. Adrian grabbed the phone so fast it almost skidded off the table. He turned it face down, fingers tight around it. Her stomach nodded. Not from the baby this time. From the cold, sharp edge of fear. Who's C? She asked softly. Adrian's voice sharpened. Are you checking my phone now? You left it unlocked on the table, she replied. The message just popped up. That doesn't mean you get to read it, he muttered. I didn't read it, she whispered. I just saw... It's work, Elena. She swallowed. Work doesn't usually send heart emojis. He stopped halfway to the hallway but didn't turn around. Don't start, he warned. I'm tired. He disappeared into the bathroom and shut the door harder than he needed to. Seconds later, the shower came on. He never showered this late, not unless he had been somewhere he didn't want to talk about. Elena stood in the middle of the living room, her body still, her mind racing. Mommy, are you sad? Leo whispered. She forced a smile that felt like it would crack. No, baby, just tired, she said. Another lie to cover another wound. She picked up Adrian's suit jacket from the arm of the chair. It smelled like his cologne. And something else, a soft, floral perfume that wasn't hers. The same kind she'd once smelled faintly on his shirt 2 weeks ago and told herself was from a coworker's hug at the office. He had sprayed fresh cologne in the bathroom. She heard the familiar click. Adrian never wore cologne right before bed, only before going out, or coming back from somewhere he shouldn't have been. When he stepped from the bathroom, hair damp, phone in hand, he didn't glance at her or Leo. He went straight to the bedroom, grabbed his keys, and shoved his wallet into his pocket. Where are you going? Elena asked, steady but soft. Back to the office, Juan said. Client issue. At this hour? It's urgent. Her mother's old warning from years ago rose up like a ghost. People hide their true intentions in small habits, Elena. Watch how they change their routines. Elena clasped her hands under her belly, fighting the urge to cry. Adrian, can we at least talk after the burial? Please, I feel you slipping away. He looked at her then, for the briefest moment. His face was unreadable. Not now, he said. He walked to the door. I'll be late. Don't wait up. The door clicked, shut. Leo slipped his small hand into hers. Daddy didn't kiss her, he whispered. No, she replied quietly. He didn't. Her phone buzzed. New message. Sophia, is Adrian treating you right? I saw how he acted last week. Something feels off. Elena stared at the words, her thumb hovering over the screen. She wanted to defend him, like she always did. But deep inside, she knew Sophia was right. And soon Elena would hear something she could never unhear. The proof that the man she loved had already replaced her. The sound of another woman's laughter cut through the quiet like a knife. Elena froze in the dark hallway, her bare feet pressing into the cool wooden floor. The bathroom door at the end stood half open, steam drifting out in lazy clouds. Behind the frosted glass, Adrian's shadow moved, phone held close to his mouth. No, he said in a low, sharp whisper. Listen, I told you, I'll handle it. She won't be a problem much longer. Elena's pulse thundered in her ears. He wasn't talking about work. He wasn't talking about stress. He was talking about her. She took a slow step closer, careful not to let the floor creak. Adrian dropped his voice, but the house was quiet enough that she heard every poisonous word. She still thinks we're just going through a rough patch, he said. Once the funeral is done, I'll be out. You know I don't want this marriage anymore. Silence. Then that same soft laugh again, warm, playful, familiar in a way that burned. A laugh she hadn't heard from him in months. Just promise me, Adrian, the woman's voice purred through the speaker. No more delays. No more delays, like Elena's existence was just something clogging his schedule. He sighed, and this time the sound was happy. I promise, Chloe. Soon. Chloe. See, the message from earlier suddenly fit like the missing piece of a cruel puzzle. The words echoed through Elena's chest, battering against the walls of her disbelief. Years earlier. Adrian holds both her hands, smiling softly. I want forever with you, Elena. I don't care what you have or don't have. I just want you. 6 months ago, Elena winces, trying to stand up from the couch, clutching her early pregnancy nausea. Can you stay home tonight? I feel awful, she asks. He doesn't look up from his laptop. You're too needy lately, Elena. I can't drop everything for every little thing. 2 weeks ago, he lies as far from her as he can in bed, claiming he's too hot to cuddle. She had believed him then. Now she knew better. A tiny sob slipped out before she could stop it. She slapped a hand over her mouth, terrified he'd hear. She wasn't ready to confront him. Not yet. Not without thinking, not without a plan, not while she was this close to her due date and clinging to the little strength she had left. In the bathroom, Adrian's voice softened. Good night, sweetheart, he murmured. Sweetheart. He'd stopped calling Elena that months ago. The walls seemed to tilt around her. Tears gathered and finally spilled, sliding down her cheeks and dripping onto the hardwood floor. Her mind tried to bargain. Maybe she misunderstood. Maybe he meant something else. Maybe... No. The perfume on his jacket, the heart emoji, the midnight office trips, the way he'd already emotionally left their home. All of it pointed in one direction. The call ended with a soft beep. Light shifted under the bathroom door as he moved. Elena pressed herself into the shadow beside the guest bedroom, holding her breath as though her life depended on it. The door swung open. Adrian stepped into the hallway, towel around his waist, phone still in his hand. He glanced at the screen, smiled to himself, then locked it with a new passcode. He walked past her hiding place without so much as a pause. He didn't sense her. He didn't look for her. In that moment, she realized he didn't emotionally live in this house anymore. He disappeared into their bedroom, humming under his breath. Elena stayed where she was, clinging to the wall. Her body shook. Her chest hurt. Her throat felt tight, like it was closing up around a scream she refused to release. Mommy! Leo's sleepy voice floated from the living room. Elena wiped her cheeks with the back of her hand, forcing the tremble out of her breathing. She walked toward her son. She could not break. Not in front of Leo, not tonight. She lay beside him until his breathing evened out again, one hand resting on her belly. She knew the truth now. Nothing about her marriage was what it seemed, and soon she would stand beside her mother's grave, needing him more than ever, only to watch him deliver the final blow. The shovel struck the earth with a dull thud, and the sound carved through Elena's chest. Intensity crashed over her like a wave. Family members circled the open grave, dressed in black, murmuring prayers, crossing themselves, wiping tears. The priest's voice floated in the cool air, but the words blurred around her. Elena, 9 months pregnant, eyes swollen from sleepless nights, heart already shattered, stood unsteadily near the front, gripping Leo's hand so tightly he winced. She loosened her hold, whispering, "Sorry, baby," and stroked his knuckles with her thumb. They were lowering her mother's coffin now. Her father's remains had been laid to rest weeks earlier in a small private ceremony overseas. Today was the public burial her mother deserved. Friends, workers from the old Vargas factories, neighbors who only knew Marisol as the kind nurse who always brought food when someone was sick. To most here, Elena was simply Marisol's daughter, not the Vargas heir, not a billionaire, just the grieving child saying goodbye. She could barely stand. "Elena, mi hija, lean on me," Aunt Maria whispered, slipping an arm around her. Elena nodded, swallowing back nausea and grief. The baby shifted against her ribs as if sensing the storm. As the coffin descended, movement near the cemetery gates caught her eye. A dark sedan idled there, just beyond the official parking area. Through the windshield, she glimpsed a woman with dark hair and oversized sunglasses. The woman's gaze was locked on the burial, then flicked toward a familiar figure standing near the back of the crowd. Adrian. Elena's stomach twisted. She didn't know the woman's name yet. She just recognized the shape of her silhouette. And in a flash, she remembered the floral perfume on Adrian's suit, the perfume that wasn't hers. Of course he wouldn't come alone. Adrian stepped forward now, dressed in a suit that looked more like a business presentation than a burial. His face was smooth, lacking any of the redness or puffiness grief usually brought. He carried a manila folder. "Elena," he called quietly. She turned, expecting, hoping for at least a shared moment of pain. They had lost the same woman who had called him son for 13 years, but his eyes were flat, cold, purposeful. "Not here, Adrian," Aunt Maria warned, sensing something in his posture. He ignored her. "We need to talk," he said. "Now?" Elena whispered. "I'm burying my mother." He held out the folder. "Petition for dissolution of marriage." The words didn't sink in at first. They just floated in the air like smoke. Then they hit her all at once. The grave, the coffin, the priest's prayer, her son's small fingers in her hand, and divorce papers. A ripple of shocked whispers moved through the mourners. Mr. Hayes, standing a few rows back to represent the legal side of the Vargas family, stiffened. He knew Adrian, knew the loans tied to his career, knew exactly what it meant for him to choose this moment. "Adrian," Elena's voice broke. "Why today?" "Because dragging it out is worse," he said, as if this was a routine conversation. "We both know this marriage hasn't worked in years. I'm just being honest." "We were supposed to talk after the funeral," she whispered. He'd texted her that earlier in the week. She thought he meant comfort, plans for the baby, financial decisions. He'd meant this. "I'm pregnant with your daughter," she said, her free hand covering her belly. "Can't this wait one day?" "You'll manage," he replied. "Your family will take care of you." He had no idea how true that statement really was. Leo tugged at her dress. "Daddy is leaving us?" he asked, voice shaking. Adrian finally looked at his son, but his expression barely softened. "Go stand with your Aunt Leo." Behind him, the dark car door at the edge of the cemetery opened halfway. The brunette in sunglasses leaned forward, then hesitated when she saw the attention the scene was drawing. She pulled the door nearly shut again, watching through the narrow gap. So that was Chloe's version of support, close enough to claim the moment, far enough to pretend she hadn't seen the damage. A memory stabbed through Elena. 1 month ago. Adrian slams a kitchen drawer. "Your family's drama is exhausting," he says. "Hospitals, lawyers, funerals. I can't keep putting my life on hold for this." Back then, she thought it was stress talking. Now she recognized it as a man who had already picked his exit. "I won't sign these today," Elena whispered, her hands trembling as she clutched the folder. "Not at my mother's grave." "You don't need to sign them now," he said. "Just make it quick. My lawyer already filed. This is a formality." Her knees buckled. "Elena!" Aunt Maria cried, catching her as she swayed. Mr. Hayes stepped closer. "She needs to sit," he said sharply. But Elena couldn't. Not yet. She needed to see this, to remember. Adrian adjusted his watch, already glancing toward the parking lot. "I'll send someone for my things," he said. "It's better this way." "Better? For who?" she asked, her voice barely audible. He didn't answer. As he turned and walked away, the brunette woman slid fully back into her seat, shrinking down slightly as Adrian approached. He didn't introduce her, didn't look back, just opened her passenger door, murmured something, then went to the trunk of his own car. Lena watched the suitcase he'd packed days earlier. She remembered the missing shirts, the half-empty drawer being lifted into the trunk. Her world had already broken. She just hadn't seen the pieces yet, and as Adrian walked toward his car, suitcase in hand, Elena felt a sick certainty. This was not just a fight. This was the moment he would truly abandon them. The car engine roared to life, too loud for a cemetery. Elena's heart lurched as the sound ripped through the air. It sounded like something tearing, like a door slamming shut on the life she thought she had. Adrian rolled his suitcase across the gravel toward his car, shoulders tense, eyes fixed ahead. The brunette woman, Chloe, though Elena still didn't know the name, waited in the sedan near the exit, sunglasses still on, face turned toward her phone. He was leaving. walking away from his wife, walking away from his son, walking away from his unborn daughter. Adrian, Elena's voice cracked as she tried to move toward him, one hand on her belly. Please, not like this. We just buried my mother. He didn't slow down. Aunt Maria tightened her arm around Elena. Careful, Hija. You're shaking, she murmured. Leo's small voice trembled. I'll talk to him, he whispered. Daddy listens to me. Leo, wait. Elena reached out, but he wriggled away and ran. Her heart jumped into her throat. Daddy, Leo shouted, his little shoes crunching over the gravel. Daddy, don't leave. Mommy's crying. Please, don't go. Adrian finally stopped. For a second, everything froze. He turned just enough to look at his son, but he did not kneel. He did not open his arms. His expression was impatient. Leo, he sighed, go back to your mother. Leo's face crumpled. But you said we'd be together when the baby comes. Adrian's jaw tensed. Plans change. Go stand with Aunt Sophia. He turned away before Leo could answer. At the edge of the lot, Chloe shifted in her seat, leaning away from the windshield like she didn't want to be recognized. She watched, though, every gesture, every tear. Elena tried to walk toward them, but her knees threatened to give way. The stress, the heat, the grief, the shock, her body felt like it was shutting down. She stumbled, dropping to one knee in the grass beside her mother's grave. The pain in her chest collided with a sharp, sudden pressure deep in her abdomen. Adrian, please, she gasped. I'm not okay. He opened the driver's door. You'll manage, he said. Your family's here. You're not alone. He had used those words so many times. You'll manage. To excuse every absence, every selfish choice. Sophia sprinted after Leo and scooped him into her arms before he could reach the moving car. Leo kicked and sobbed against her. No, Daddy, don't leave us. Don't leave Mommy. Adrian didn't look back. He shut the door, started the engine, and pulled away. His car rolled forward, then accelerated, tires grinding over loose stones. Chloe's sedan followed after a brief pause, merging behind him and disappearing through the cemetery gates. Silence crashed down in their wake. Elena raised her head in time to see the cars vanish around the corner. The last image she had of Adrian was his profile through the windshield, eyes focused straight ahead and hands steady on the wheel as if this was just another commute. Something inside her finally snapped. The man she'd defended, the man she'd excused, the man she'd loved. He was gone. Shock hit first, numb and white-hot. Then humiliation, remembering all the relatives watching. Then a deeper pain, the realization that Leo had watched his father choose a stranger over them. Her breathing came in shallow bursts. Aunt Maria knelt beside her. Elena, look at me. Breathe, mi amor. Mr. Hayes approached, concern etched deep into his face. He had stayed quietly on the edge of the chaos, but he could see now that this was more than emotional. Elena, he said firmly but gently, you are pale. We should get you checked by a doctor. She shook her head, clutching her stomach. Not yet. I need to finish saying goodbye. She turned her gaze to the grave, to the flowers, to her mother's photograph smiling up from the frame. I'm so sorry, Mama, she whispered. I thought I chose right. I thought I picked a man who would stay. Tears blurred her vision. Mr. Hayes glanced at Aunt Maria, then crouched to meet Elena's eyes. Elena, he said quietly, I wouldn't bring this up today if it weren't urgent, but your parents left very clear instructions. She blinked, trying to focus. Instructions? She repeated. It's about their will, he said. They insisted we meet as soon as the burial was done. They left something important, for you only. The world around her muted, the murmured condolences, the sound of shovels, the distant hum of traffic. All she could hear was the word will echoing in her mind. And in the middle of her deepest heartbreak, Elena had no idea. The will waiting for her would not only restore her, but place her hands on the strings of everything Adrian depended on. The click of the projector made Elena flinch. The sound was small, but after the burial, everything felt too loud. The modest conference room in Mr. Hayes' law firm was quiet, blinds half closed, the air heavy with the smell of paper and old leather. Intensity filled the air in a different way now, not from shouting or engines or slammed doors, but from the knowledge that whatever came next would change everything. Mr. Hayes, in his late 60s with silver hair and a tired kindness in his eyes, stood beside the small screen with the remote in his hand. "This recording," he said gently, "was made 2 years ago by your parents. They instructed me to play it for you after both of them had passed, and after your mother's local burial." Elena sat stiffly in the leather chair. Her black dress felt too tight around her 9-month belly. Her feet ached. Her eyes were red and swollen from crying. Aunt Maria held one of her hands. Sophia stood behind her, fingers resting on Elena's shoulder. Leo sat beside her, clutching his stuffed dinosaur, quieter than usual. The room went still. The screen flickered to life, and her parents appeared. Victor and Marisol Vargas, side by side on a couch Elena recognized from their old home, smiled into the camera. Her father in his usual simple button-up shirt, her mother with her hair pulled back, no jewelry except her wedding ring. "Hello, mi hija," Marisol said softly. Elena's breath broke. Tears sprang to her eyes. Victor leaned forward slightly. "If you are seeing this, Elena, it means your mother and I are no longer with you in this world," he said, voice gentle but steady. "We are sorry you must hear our voices this way." Marisol continued, "But we did not want lawyers or numbers to be your first contact with our legacy. We wanted you to hear it from us." Victor took a breath. "To our only daughter, Elena, you are now the sole heir to Vargas Holdings and all associated companies, jointly valued at approximately $9 billion. The number hung in the air like thunder. Leo blinked, not understanding. Aunt Maria squeezed Elena's hand. Sophia's fingers tightened on her shoulder. Elena sat frozen. She'd known they were wealthy, Tamamai. She'd seen the factories, she'd watched the trucks, but she had never heard the full number spoken out loud. Her parents always lived like comfortable middle-class people, not like billionaires. Victor continued, "You will hold controlling shares in all major branches. You have full authority over our corporate interests, including the right to approve, adjust, or cancel any loans tied to Vargas Holdings." Her mother added, "We hid this from the public and kept our name out of headlines. We did it for safety and for you. We wanted you to grow up kind, not entitled, to choose love without fear of gold diggers." Elena wiped her cheeks, shoulders trembling. Victor's eyes softened. "You may wonder what this means for the people around you, including your husband. There is something you must know." The next words cut deeper than she expected. "About 4 years ago," Victor said, "you asked if we could help Adrian's career. You said he was hardworking, ambitious, and deserved a chance. We quietly guaranteed a business loan linked to the company he works for. The lender of record is Vargas Holdings, not our personal names." Elena's eyes widened. "We did this on 2 conditions," he went on. "One, that Adrian never learn we did it because of you. We did not want his love to change. 2, that if his character ever proved dangerous to you or your children, the final decision over those guarantees would rest with you." Marisol looked straight into the camera. "If Adrian has been good to you, fair to you, loyal to you, we hoped you would keep helping him. If he has not, then remember me, hija. Your safety and peace come first. You owe no one access to your heart or your inheritance." Victor finished. "Your heart is your greatest strength. Use it with wisdom, and do not let anyone treat you as if you are lucky they stayed. You are the one who is a gift." The video ended, the screen went black. Silence swallowed the room. Elena stared straight ahead, hearing only the echo of Adrian's words at the grave. "You'll manage. Your family will take care of you." He had no idea what her family really was. Mr. Hayes stepped forward and placed a stack of documents in front of her. Share transfers, trust instructions, power of signature forms. "These make everything your parents just said legally real," he explained. "As of today, you are the primary shareholder and final signatory for Vargas Holdings. The existing guarantee on Adrian's business loans now falls under your authority." Elena swallowed hard. "So, Tia, if I leave everything alone, his business continues?" "Yes," Mr. Hayes said. "If you withdraw or change the support, the lending bank will reassess his risk. His entire branch could be affected." Aunt Maria's voice was soft but firm. You are not obligated to protect the man who left you at your mother's grave, Hija. Sophia squeezed her shoulder. You finally see the whole board now, Elena. You're not a pawn. You never were. Something shifted inside her. The grief was still there. The humiliation was still raw. But under it, a new feeling appeared. Quiet, steady, dangerous in its calm. She was not powerless. She had never been powerless. She had just never used the power that was hers. Mr. Hayes looked her in the eyes. There is more we can do to protect you and your children, he said. But first, you need the full truth. I've already engaged someone to help us with that. And soon Elena would see what had really been happening behind her back. Every hotel stay, every message, every lie laid out in black and white. The office door opened with a firm, controlled push. Elena startled slightly, still unused to being at the center of meetings. It had been 3 days since the burial and the will video. 3 days of restless sleep, quiet tears, and long talks with Aunt Maria and Sophia about what to do next. Now she sat at a conference table again, this time without funeral clothes, but still in dark, loose maternity wear. Mr. Hayes sat beside her. A woman in her early 30s walked in carrying a thick black folder. This was Maya Torres, a private investigator who had worked on sensitive cases for Mr. Hayes and for Vargas Holdings long before Elena ever needed her. Short hair, steady gaze, posture that said she didn't waste words. The intensity in the room sharpened as she set the folder on the table. We have what you asked for, Maya said, looking first at Mr. Hayes, then at Elena. Enough to build a very clear picture of Adrian's behavior over the last year. Elena's fingers tightened together. You were able to find all of that this fast? Maya nodded. Your father authorized preliminary monitoring months before he died. He had some concerns about Adrian's financial decisions and asked me to keep an eye on anything that might put the company or you at risk. After his death, that report was frozen until Mr. Hayes confirmed your wishes. Mr. Hayes added gently, when you told me about Chloe and the call, I asked Maya to complete the file. So her father had seen the cracks before she did. The realization hurt, but it also made her feel strangely protected. Maya opened the folder and slid several documents toward Elena. These are hotel receipts, she explained. Same 2 hotels, same city, same weekday evenings, 3 months in a row. Room charged to Adrian's company card, but checked in with a guest, a woman named Chloe Bennett. Elena stared at the receipts. There was Adrian's handwriting, his familiar rushed signature, the same dates he claimed he was buried in late meetings. Sophia, sitting on the other side of Elena, covered her mouth. Elena! Maya placed printed screenshots next. These are text messages between Adrian and Chloe, she said, recovered from phone backups and records you authorized through your phone provider as his spouse. Late-night messages. I miss you. Last night was amazing. Photos, plans. Elena's stomach churned. The room blurred for a second. Maya's tone softened. This part is hard to see. You don't have to look at every line now. The point is, this wasn't a one-time mistake. This was an ongoing relationship. Then Maya slid one more document forward, dated several months before her parents' accident. This shows he was cheating before your parents died, she said. First hotel stay with Chloe, 8 months ago. Before you were this far along in your pregnancy. Before the plane crash. Before the funerals. The timeline snapped into place. He hadn't turned cold because of stress. He hadn't become distant because he was overwhelmed. He had already left their marriage in his heart. The grief Elena felt shifted. It stopped being confusion and became something clean and sharp. Clarity. Maya cleared her throat. There's also financial misconduct on his side. He charged personal trips to his company card. If the company audits these expenses, it won't go well for him. Mr. Hayes nodded, which is where your position comes in. Because Vargas Holdings guarantees key loans to his branch, you have legal standing to request a full audit as a primary stakeholder and guarantor. Sophia squeezed Elena's arm. You don't have to destroy him, she whispered, but you don't have to shield him anymore either. Elena stared at the pile of proof, hotel receipts, texts, expense logs, evidence of the life he'd been living while she sat at home counting kicks and calling hospitals. How long have I been the last to know? She asked quietly. Maya answered honestly. Months. The words settled like a stone. Mr. Hayes slid a simple form toward her. Just one page this time. This authorizes a full audit of all accounts related to Adrian's department and the loans tied to it, he said. The board will review the results. Depending on what they find, there may be professional consequences for him beyond the divorce. Elena picked up the pen. For a moment, her hand trembled. She thought of Leo crying at the cemetery, of Adrian turning away, of Chloe waiting in that car. The trembling stopped. "Protect my children," she said quietly, "and protect my parents' name." She signed. Maya closed the folder. Then it begins. And while Adrian still strutted around his office as if nothing had changed, the strings that held his career up were already being pulled from a boardroom he didn't even know his wife now controlled. 3 weeks later, the air in the Vargas Holdings boardroom buzzed with a different kind of tension. The preliminary audit was complete. Elena walked into the room with Mr. Hayes at her side. Her posture was striated now. Her belly felt lighter, because in the days since signing the audit form, she had brought her daughter into the world. The labor had come suddenly, a week after the will reading. It was fast and intense, but safe. Now, though she still wore loose clothing and moved carefully, she had a new strength in her eyes. She wasn't only a grieving daughter and abandoned wife anymore. She was also a mother of 2, and the owner of the table she was walking toward. Inside the room sat 4 people who rose when she entered. Mr. Kwan, the board chair, early 60s, sharp-eyed, steady. Mrs. Patel, the CFO, elegant in her 50s, with a reputation for strict ethics. Daniel Ruiz, known in the company as HR Daniel, calm and observant. Ms. Clark, the company's internal counsel, a woman in her 40s with a firm voice and a tall stack of files. "Elena," Mr. Kwan said warmly, "thank you for coming, and congratulations on your baby." "Thank you," Elena replied, giving a small nod. Her hands rested on the table, fingers interlaced, trying to steady the weight of what was about to be discussed. As everyone settled, the intensity of the room shifted into a serious, focused calm. Mrs. Patel opened a folder labeled Internal Audit, Coal Department. "Elena," she began, "the audit you authorized revealed multiple issues connected to your husband's role as branch manager." Elena's mouth went dry, but she kept her gaze level. "Please tell me plainly." Mrs. Patel slid the first set of documents toward her. "First, we confirmed repeated misuse of the corporate credit card," she explained. "Hotel stays under the label client meetings that matched the receipts Investigator Torres gathered. There were no clients present. The receipts are clearly personal." Daniel added, "Staff saw him with the same woman on several occasions near those hotels. Some of them assumed she was a client. Others suspected otherwise." Mrs. Patel continued, "Second, we found timesheet irregularities. Hours billed to the company that conflict with his actual presence on site. He was being paid for work he didn't do." Ms. Clark, the lawyer, tapped another document. "Third, there are multiple internal complaints from female staff about inappropriate comments and unwanted flirtation. Most were verbal reports to direct supervisors who were either scared to escalate or believed it wouldn't be taken seriously." Daniel nodded. "Those women are willing to give full statements now that we've initiated this process. They felt safer knowing the audit came from the top." Each statement landed like a dull thud in the room. Elena didn't flinch outwardly, but inside there was a shifting. He wasn't just a bad husband. He was a liability to everyone around him. Mr. Kwan leaned forward. "Because you now own the controlling shares, and because your father previously backed his branch with company guarantees, we needed your permission to move forward on 2 fronts, internal discipline and loan restructuring." "Loan restructuring?" Elena repeated. "Yes," Mrs. Patel said. "Given these findings, Vargas Holdings is no longer comfortable guaranteeing the loans tied directly to Adrian's department. We can withdraw the guarantee. The bank will then decide whether to call the loan, raise rates, or demand new security." Elena thought of her father's words in the video. "If his character ever proves dangerous to you, the decision is yours." Ms. Clark spoke clearly. "From an HR and legal standpoint, we recommend termination with cause. The evidence supports it. The guarantee withdrawal is a business decision that falls under your discretion." The room fell quiet. The choice lay in front of her. For a moment, Elena saw two images in her mind: Adrian walking away from her at the grave, and the workers who depended on the company making wise decisions. "This isn't about revenge," she said finally, her voice soft but solid. "It's about integrity. He used company money to fund his affair. He disrespected staff who trusted him, and he left his own family at a burial." She took a slow breath. "Follow company policy," she said. "If the policy says termination, terminate. If the bank needs to reevaluate the loan because we withdraw our guarantee, let them." Mr. Kwan nodded, respect evident in his eyes. "We'll proceed exactly by the book," he said. "No more, no less." Ms. Clark gathered the documents. "With your consent recorded, we'll finalize the internal decision and complete the written report. It will also form part of the disclosure for your upcoming court hearing." Elena blinked. "The court hearing? It's soon?" Mr. Hayes answered. "Yes, the divorce and custody hearing is scheduled next month. The judge will see not just what he did to you, but who he is in the eyes of his employer." The meeting wrapped up, but as Elena stood, Ms. Clark stopped her gently. "Elena," she said quietly, "I know this is painful, seeing your personal life and his professional life collide, but you should know he did this to himself. You're just refusing to hide it." Elena met her eyes. "I understand," she said. For the first time, she felt her lungs fill all the way. She wasn't pulling strings out of spite. She was simply refusing to be the woman who silently absorbed his damage. And while Adrian still bragged to Chloe that the divorce would go his way, he had no idea the judge was about to read his sins aloud, line by line, in front of everyone. The judge's gavel cracked against the wood, and every whispered conversation died instantly. Elena sat at the plaintiff's table, hands folded in her lap. Her breathing was slow and careful. Under the table, her legs shook just enough that she pressed her feet harder into the floor to steady herself. It had been just over a month since the burial. Her daughter had been born 2 weeks after that. Now the baby stayed at home with Aunt Maria and Sophia, while Elena faced the next battlefield. Mr. Hayes sat beside her, calm and prepared. Behind them, Maya watched quietly, along with a few family members and company representatives. Across the aisle, Adrian sat at the defense table. He looked different. Gone was the easy arrogance. His shoulders slumped. A faint shadow darkened his jaw, like he hadn't slept well. He kept adjusting his tie, sweating slightly under the courtroom lights. He still had a lawyer, his own, but he looked less like a man in control and more like a man waiting for a sentence he didn't understand. The judge, a woman in her 50s with steady eyes, scanned the documents in front of her. "This court will now review the evidence in the matter of Elena Vargas versus Adrian Cole," she said. "This involves dissolution of marriage, child custody, and associated financial obligations." She lifted the first paper. Exhibit A, text messages indicating an ongoing extramarital relationship between Mr. Cole and Ms. Chloe Bennett over several months, including during Mrs. Vargas's late-term pregnancy and the period surrounding her parents' deaths. Gasps rippled quietly through the spectators. Adrian shifted in his seat, jaw clenching. Elena stared straight ahead, eyes fixed on the judge's bench. She refused to meet his gaze. Exhibit B, the judge continued, witness statements and photographic evidence confirming that on the day of Mrs. Vargas's mother's burial, Mr. Cole presented divorce papers at the graveside and left the location immediately afterward, despite Mrs. Vargas being at full term in her pregnancy and their minor child present. Adrian winced as the words were spoken in such clinical detail. The judge's voice remained even. Exhibit C, documentation of emotionally cruel statements made by Mr. Cole toward Mrs. Vargas during her pregnancy and immediately after the loss of her parents, as corroborated by text messages and witness testimony from relatives. Jenna, the young co-worker, and others sat watching, some for moral support, some to see justice. The judge raised another document. Exhibit D, internal company audit excerpts provided by Vargas Holdings, confirming misuse of corporate funds by Mr. Cole for personal hotel stays, misrepresentation of business expenses, and patterns of inappropriate behavior toward female staff. Adrian's eyes widened. "They gave you that?" he blurted. "Sit down, Mr. Cole," the judge said firmly. "You will have your turn." He sank back, breathing hard. Mr. Hayes stood. Your Honor, may we call our first witness? He asked. Proceed, she replied. Ms. Jenna Carter, Mr. Hayes called. Jenna walked carefully to the stand, nervously twisting her fingers. She was in her early 20s, hair pulled back, wearing a simple blouse. She looked like she wanted to be anywhere else. But she sat, raised her hand, and swore to tell the truth. Ms. Carter, Mr. Hayes said gently, you worked under Mr. Cole, correct? She nodded. Yes, in his branch. Can you tell the court how he treated you and some of the other women in the office? Jenna swallowed. He would flirt a lot. Say things like, if you want to move up quickly, it helps to be friendly. He'd stand too close. Sometimes he'd put a hand on my shoulder and not move it. Did you feel comfortable reporting this? Mr. Hayes asked. At first, no, she said. He was my manager. He talked about being close to upper management. I was afraid I'd lose my job. Mr. Hayes nodded. And did you later share any of this with HR as part of the audit? Yes, Jenna replied. When they said it was confidential and that the top shareholders were involved, I finally felt safe enough. Thank you, Mr. Hayes said. No further questions. Adrian's lawyer tried to poke holes, asking if anything was misinterpreted, but Jenna's answers were simple and consistent. She wasn't exaggerating. She wasn't out for revenge. She was just tired of being scared. When Jenna stepped down, the judge turned to Adrian. Mr. Cole, she said, you have been presented today not just as a husband who failed morally, but as a man whose conduct raises serious concerns about stability, responsibility, and respect for those dependent on him. He shook his head. She fooled me, he burst out, pointing at Elena. She never told me who she really was. If I'd known she was Vargas, the judge cut him off. Your lack of awareness about your wife's inheritance does not excuse your behavior, Mr. Cole. Your actions are your own. Adrian fell silent, stunned by how little that argument helped him. The judge lifted the final ruling document. Based on the evidence, this court grants primary physical and legal custody of the children to Mrs. Elena Vargas. Mr. Cole will receive limited visitation, supervised until further evaluation. Financial obligations are assigned in alignment with his capacity, subject to revision after his employment status, and the company's internal processes are fully resolved. She paused. Additionally, the court recognizes the emotional harm caused by serving divorce papers at a burial and considers that act as an aggravating factor in assessing his credibility as a supportive parent. The gavel came down once. Decision made. Adrian stared at Elena, stunned. The life he assumed would bend in his favor had not. Elena finally looked at him. Her eyes held no hatred, just distance and peace, dear Maon. You fooled yourself, she said quietly. He opened his mouth to argue, but the bailiff was already asking people to clear the room. And as Adrian walked out of the courthouse feeling stripped and exposed, he still clung to one hope, that at least his job remained his. He had no idea the last door he thought was open was already locked. Sir, you can't go inside. The security guard's voice stopped Adrian mid-step, inches from the glass doors of the office building he'd marched through with confidence for years. Intensity hit him like a punch to the stomach. What do you mean I can't go inside? He demanded. I work here. Not anymore, came a calm voice from behind the guard. Adrian looked up to see Daniel Ruiz, HR Daniel, approach, holding a slim folder. Daniel's face was professional, but there was a trace of pity in his eyes. Adrian, Daniel said, thank you for coming. We asked you to be here today to collect your separation documents. Separation? Adrian snapped. I'm the best manager this branch has. You can't just... Daniel opened the folder and spoke steadily. The audit found misuse of company funds, falsified expense reports, and multiple ethics complaints. The board voted. Your employment is terminated with cause, effective immediately. Adrian's mouth went dry. The board? Who on the board would... Daniel met his eyes. The primary shareholder signed off on the decision. Adrian frowned. Who even is the primary shareholder? I've never met... Then the name landed like a hammer. Ms. Elena Vargas, Daniel said. For a second, Adrian forgot how to breathe. Elena? He whispered. You mean my Elena? She's the shareholder? Of Vargas? Behind the front desk, a few employees watched. Some pretended to type, but their eyes kept flicking to the scene at the door. Someone whispered, "Isn't that the guy who got exposed in court?" Another murmured, "He cheated on that Elena. He's finished." Adrian felt the walls closing in. His phone buzzed in his pocket like a last lifeline. He snatched it out. New message. "Chloe, I'm sorry, Adrian. I didn't know it would get this messy. I can't be involved in this. Please don't contact me again." Just like that, the woman he'd risked everything for walked away with a few lines of text. He stared at the message, then at the glass doors he could no longer walk through, then at Daniel's steady face. His job, his affair, his reputation, his access to the life he bragged about. Gone. "Where am I supposed to go?" he muttered, more to himself than to Daniel. Daniel's voice was quiet. "That's not for the company to decide anymore, Adrian. These are your final documents." He held out the folder. "Security will escort you off the property once you've signed." Adrian took the folder with numb fingers. He signed. The pen felt heavier than it should. As he left the building, the automatic doors opened, then closed behind him with a soft hiss that sounded too much like a goodbye. Hours later, after walking aimlessly through streets that suddenly seemed colder, he found himself standing in front of a familiar door. The small, modest house he used to call home. He hesitated, then knocked. The door opened. Elena stood there, holding a tiny bundle against her chest. Their newborn daughter slept peacefully, her small face relaxed. Leo sat on the floor behind her, building a tower with blocks, humming to himself. Warm light spilled from the living room. The air smelled like baby lotion and home-cooked food. Everything he had thrown away was right in front of him. "Elena," he said, voice hoarse. I lost my job. The court," he swallowed. "I'm sorry, I didn't know who you were. If I'd known..." She looked at him for a long, quiet moment. "That's the point, Adrian," she said softly. "You didn't know who I was because you never cared to look. Not when I was grieving. Not when I was pregnant. Not when our son cried for you." Her words weren't shouted. They didn't need to be. He glanced past her, at Leo and the baby. "Can I at least come in? I have nowhere else." She shifted their daughter gently in her arms and placed her free hand on the door. "I don't hate you," she said. "I don't wish you harm, but I moved on the day you walked away at my mother's grave. I won't open this door and step back into the same pain." His eyes filled with desperate tears. "Elena, please. You still think this is about who I am on paper," she said quietly. "Billionaire. Shareholder. Vargas." She shook her head. "You never understood that the real treasure was the family you already had." She gave a small, sad smile. "That treasure is mine to protect now." And with that, she closed the door. Not slammed, not violently, just a gentle, final close. Adrian stood there, listening to the soft sounds on the other side. Leo's laughter, a baby's small sigh, the faint murmur of a woman who had learned her worth. He realized then that the worst loss wasn't the brahma, the money, or the public shame. It was standing on the outside of a life he'd been allowed to have, and knowing he'd thrown it away. Inside, Elena walked back to the rocking chair. She sat down, cradling her daughter, while Leo proudly showed her the tower he'd built. Her voice came in a soft, reflective narration, like the close of a story she was finally ready to tell. "He left me at a grave, but that day I buried only the version of myself that needed his validation. I rose as the woman my parents raised me to be, a woman who knows her value with or without a man beside her." She smiled at her children. Peace settled around her like a warm blanket. She had her family, she had her legacy, she had herself. For the first time in a long time, she felt whole. I hope you enjoyed watching this story as much as I love creating it for you. Please like, share, and comment the lessons you learned. And let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. See you in my next video.